Well, whether it was spearheading diplomatic agreements between Israel and Arab states or using his business acumen to lead the COVID-19 supply chain task force, our next guest played an integral role in the Trump administration. Joining us now to discuss is the author of a brand new best-selling book, Breaking History, a White House Memoir, former senior advisor to President Trump, Jared Kushner. Jared, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Sean, for having me. Great to be with you.
Good to see you. Obviously, a big day in Trump world today. This judge down in Florida punting on whether to appoint a special master. Have you spoken to the former president about what he thinks about this decision or the DOJ's current filing regarding these documents?
I spoke to him earlier this morning, but not since the ruling. But obviously, what he wants is just transparency here in terms of the affidavit, and also figuring out how to get the right custody to make sure that everything's handled in the right way. I think that the Department of Justice escalated this situation, which really seems to be a tussle over paperwork, to a really high level by raiding the home of their leading political opponent right now. And that's something that's just been very concerning to a lot of people at a time where the FBI should be trying to rebuild the trust and credibility that they lost during the false investigations of the administration that I described pretty extensively in my book, Breaking History.
Yeah. You talk about in the book both the role you played in the 2016 and the 2020 campaigns. I believe that, especially in light of what the FBI has done, that President Trump will run again. One, do you share that belief? And two, if he were to run again in 2024, would you work on that campaign?
So I think he's President Trump right now is very troubled by what he's seeing happening in the country. Again, I write in the book, not only was it like what it was like being under investigation for the Russia collusion narrative and for being attacked, falsely impeached or besmirched by the media. And again, you saw it firsthand working in the White House, how relentless the attacks were, but also how President Trump got so many things done. Inflation was low, gas prices were low, the wealth gap in the country was shrinking, the trade deals that everyone said wouldn't get done, got done, bringing jobs back for the middle class and for our manufacturing base here in America. All the pundits, were saying that if President Trump was elected during the campaign, that he would bring World War III. And I write extensively about how he worked to bring peace deals. And then you watch what's happening now. Gas prices are up, inflation is up, the economy is not doing as well as it was before, and we have a war in Europe, and China's being very provocative in Taiwan. So at the end of the day, I know that it bothers him to see. I think he fixed a lot of these problems, and it's something that could be fixed again. So I know that's something that's very much on his mind. I know he'll make a decision or an announcement at the right time.
So if he does say yes, are you in?
I'll support him as a family member should. I think that I go through all of my experience of the campaign. Again, that's where I met you for the first time in 2016. What it was like on that campaign, and then what it was like adjusting to life in the White House. But it was a very intense experience. I try to show the readers that in the book. But right now, I'm loving the opportunity to spend time with my family and being in the private sector.
I know that feeling, and I get asked a lot, if he runs and he wins again, would you ever go back into government? So I'll ask you the same question. Let's just put the campaign aside. He runs, he wins. Same question to you. Would you go back into government in any way?
Yeah, I really, my strong preference is to stay in the private sector and to spend time with family. As you know, it's a lot on a family to go and do that. We did that for 4 years, which is a very long time. And I think President Trump, if he does run and does win again, there's so many amazing people who we came across who joined the administration over the 4 years. And so he now has a very, very deep bench of very capable people who can help him implement his agenda very, very quickly.
Yeah, I know the sentiment. I always say it was an honor to serve. It takes its toll. So I totally get that. I will say, look, in several instances in the book, you talk about how you achieved results cutting through the bureaucracy. And look, I enjoyed going through a lot of these examples that you give. I want to call people's attention to Chapter 46. It's called Project Airbridge, and you really detail what you did during the COVID crisis to get PPE. And it's unbelievable, the work you did with the governors and everything else. But at one point, you really detail how you worked with the procurement officer at FEMA, the top procurement officer in the government. You talk about how you work with him, the White House counsel, the White House budget director, the director of FEMA. You get all these people in a room. And in that meeting, You basically say, hey, get us whatever here's all the stuff that we need. And I need you to do it in a couple hours. And you tell this guy, McCain, who's in charge of it, figure it out. And soon after, I think it's within like 75 minutes, he picks up the phone and he says, Jared, I got it done. So you basically talk about how your private sector experience, was able to bring all these people together and cut it through. But the thing that I, having worked in government before, sort of walk away from that chapter is say, okay, was that because you're really good at this? Was it because you brought the right people together? Or was it because you had access to the president because you were a son-in-law?
It's hard to determine, and I want readers to determine for themselves, right? That's why I tell all these stories. But I think the same thing that made me effective in certain ways also created a lot of enemies in certain ways. You saw, the early days of the White House where we were all coming together from different backgrounds, trying to figure out how to implement or how to even define what the actual underlying policies were behind Trump's campaign promises. And often there was tension on how forceful we could be with each other to get it done. So that was, after 3.5 years, I built a lot of confidence and obviously learned how to pull the levers of government. But, I think President Trump gave me, in some cases, a lot of latitude, in some cases, very little latitude. But I knew what he wanted. I knew what he would tolerate. And, my number one priority was to try and cause no harm. And so I knew that when I was pushing things, I knew that he would be okay if I took liberties to push things extra hard. But I write in that example about how, this gentleman who has been in FEMA for, I think, many decades turned out to be a real hero. And, he would have loved to have busted through a lot of the bureaucracies that existed, but he was never really empowered to do that. And so, we went down, we had an emergency. Everyone around the world was fighting for the same PPE. But somehow we found a way to procure it and get it, and then how we shipped it over. And I also did something for the private sector. I mean, the military planes weren't equipped to do it. So we called FedEx and UPS, and Fred Smith and David Abney, who were the CEOs, basically said, our planes are your Air Force. You don't have to use the Defense Production Act, anything you need. And they tell me to this day, it was one of the most incredible things they saw. As quickly as they could land their planes, we had them filled up with supplies, brought back to America. And we were within a week of running out of masks in this country. And we were able to get ourselves stocked up. And all those dire predictions from CNN that were going to happen ended up not happening because of thinking outside the box like private sector people.
I say that because I think it's really interesting that if you're in government and you say, wow, Jared broke through a lot of these walls and got things done. So the question kind of becomes, if you're still in government, can I do that? Or is that just because you had access? And I think that's a real standing question. You proved it can get done, but is it done because Trump allowed you to do that? But I do want to get this because you touched on it a second. You had some harsh words. You pulled no punches on a couple folks, Rex Tillerson, John Kelly. I will say, I felt like when I read Kellyanne Conway's book, she was very critical of your qualifications. But interestingly, you got things done. You talk very in detail about specifically the Abraham Accords, and that is a legacy that will live forever. In fact, it's one of the only things the Biden administration gives the Trump administration credit for. And yet she walked into a portfolio where she had no qualifications. She talked about veterans issues where she had no background in the military, no background working with veterans issue. Why did you spare her?
I didn't spare her. She wasn't somebody who I dealt with a lot. She was a communicator. She was on television a lot in the campaign, did an excellent job with that. And then when it came to serious policy in the White House, she just wasn't really involved in a lot of that. So what I write about is how things got done, whether it was trade deals or peace deals or, COVID response and working on different issues that were of real consequence. And, when it came time to be in the real rooms where real decisions were being made, where real policy, she just wasn't a part of that.
Jared, the last thing I want to ask you is, it's interesting. You talk about, especially when you were working on the First Step Act and then when you were working on the PPE, you had these relationships with Governor Andrew Cuomo and Senator Cory Booker, who sort of, I would say, kind of went against things that should have been in their interest. Were you surprised by how much they went against things that should have been in their interest just because they were anti-Trump?
So I would say, like, my third day in Washington, I learned that politicians will do some fairly illogical things in order to, either get Trump. But look, you had 4 years of just total derangement by people in the media. You think about day one, what we were dealing with, we were being accused of colluding with Russia. I mean, you were with us on the campaign, Sean. We could barely collude with each other on most days. So, but we had to spend 2 years debunking that. And then you had you had serious news organizations, at least what I perceived, like the New York Times, CNN, MSNBC. I'd turn them on at night or I'd read them in the morning, and they were just, hyperventilating about all these things that turned out to be totally, totally false. So I think that what you see is politicians. I think a lot of them still think that those organizations have credibility and they really dance to try to please them. But I think the job of the media, or most of the media, is to convince 80% of the people to think like 2% of the people. And I think, unfortunately, people do very irrational things in trying to cater to that. And so, they rewarded anyone who went against Trump, and they still do. And they try to punish people who say, like what I say in this book, which is that, Trump did a lot of very good things as president, right? No new wars, the economy was booming, historic trade deals, and those don't happen by accident, right? So I felt it was very important to write this book so that people can understand what was actually happening, and more importantly, how it was happening in an environment of maximum pressure.
Right. Jared Kushner, again, the book is called Breaking History. It's a great read. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean. It's great to be with you, and thank you again for your service as well.